The dollar just received its death sentence. Not a warning, not a diplomatic threat, not political posturing from countries that have no real power to challenge American financial hegemony. A death sentence signed, sealed, and announced to the entire world, while the Western financial media pretended absolutely nothing was happening. 3 days ago, at the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, something occurred that will be remembered as one of the most significant financial events of the 21st century, something that changes everything we thought we knew about the future of money, the future of international trade, and most importantly, the future of silver. The BRICS nations, representing nearly half of the world's population and over a third of global GDP, officially announced the framework for a new trade settlement system backed by precious metals, not backed by promises from politicians who have broken every promise they ever made. Not backed by debt that can never be repaid, not backed by the full faith and credit of governments that have proven themselves utterly unworthy of trust. Backed by silver and gold, physical metal, real money that has held value for 5,000 years of human civilization and will hold value for 5,000 more. The announcement was buried in the summit communiqué. The Western media ignored it completely. CNBC did not mention a single word. Bloomberg glossed over it with a single dismissive paragraph. The Wall Street Journal acted as if it did not happen at all. But it happened. And the implications are so profound, so fundamentally threatening to American financial dominance, that the deafening silence itself tells you everything you need to know about how scared the establishment truly is. For 80 years, since the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency. Every nation on earth has been forced to hold dollars to conduct international trade. Every barrel of oil, every ton of copper, every bushel of wheat, every container of electronics has been priced and settled in American currency. This arrangement has given the United States extraordinary, unprecedented power. The ability to print unlimited money and have other nations absorb the inflation. The ability to sanction any country by cutting them off from the dollar system. The ability to run infinite deficits because the world has no choice but to finance them. That power is ending right now in real time. While you watch this video, BRICS has just announced the alternative that the world has been waiting for, a settlement system that does not require dollars, a mechanism that uses silver and gold as the foundation of international trade, a return to monetary sanity after decades of paper currency madness. And when this system goes live, demand for dollars will collapse while demand for precious metals will explode to levels never before seen in modern financial history. Welcome to Finance Reality. Today I'm going to show you exactly what BRICS announced, exactly how the silver-backed settlement system works, and exactly why this is the most bullish news for silver in over 50 years. The dollar panic has begun. Are you positioned for what comes next? Let me show you exactly what was announced. Let me take you through the summit documents and the official statements line by line so you understand precisely what is coming and why it matters so much. The Kazan Declaration, the official communiqué of the summit, contains 134 paragraphs covering everything from agricultural cooperation to space exploration to climate initiatives. Most of it is diplomatic boilerplate that journalists skim and ignore without a second thought. But paragraph 67 is different. Paragraph 67 is a bombshell hidden in plain sight. Paragraph 67 is the most important financial announcement of the decade. Let me read it to you word for word. We welcome the discussion on the establishment of an alternative cross-border payment and settlement platform operating on distributed ledger technology with settlement in national currencies and precious metals. We task our finance ministers and central bank governors to develop implementation protocols for presentation at the next summit. Read that again carefully. Let every word sink in. Settlement in national currencies and precious metals. This is not a vague aspiration from leaders who like to make grand statements. This is not a someday maybe proposal that will be forgotten next month. This is an official task for finance ministers and central bank governors to develop implementation protocols. They are building it right now. As you watch this video, teams of financial engineers and monetary experts across 11 nations are constructing the infrastructure that will replace the dollar. But the Kazan Declaration is just the public document, the sanitized version released for international consumption. My sources tell me the real discussions happened behind closed doors in sessions that were not recorded and not released to the media. Here is what I have learned from contacts who were present at the summit or briefed on the confidential proceedings. The BRICS New Development Bank has been authorized to begin accumulating silver and gold reserves specifically earmarked for trade settlement purposes. Initial targets call for 200 million ounces of silver and 10 million ounces of gold to be held in reserve within 24 months. 200 million ounces of silver is about 25% of annual global mine production. It is more silver than currently sits in COMEX vaults. That is a staggering amount of metal that must be sourced from a market already in structural deficit. A digital token system is being developed that will be backed one for one by physical metal stored in vaults across BRICS nations. Unlike Western paper gold and paper silver, unlike SLV and GLD that trade on promises rather than metal, every single token in the system will be fully redeemable for physical metal on demand. This is the key difference. Western paper markets operate on fractional reserves. They sell more claims than they have metal. They rely on the fact that most people never ask for delivery. The BRICS system operates on full reserves, every token backed by every ounce, full redeemability guaranteed by sovereign nations. Participating nations will be able to settle bilateral trade imbalances in this token rather than in dollars. A Chinese manufacturer selling goods to Brazil can receive payment in metal-backed tokens instead of dollars or yuan or reais. An Indian pharmaceutical company selling to Russia can receive payment in silver-backed instruments. The system is designed to be completely sanction-proof because the backing is physical metal held in multiple jurisdictions across multiple continents. No single nation can freeze or seize the assets. The United States cannot weaponize this system the way it weaponized SWIFT and the dollar against Russia, Iran, Venezuela, or any nation that dares to challenge American interests. This is not theory. This is not speculation. This is happening right now. Russia and China have already begun pilot transactions using a prototype of the system. Small trades at first, testing technology and procedures, but the framework is operational. Iran and India are scheduled to join the pilot program in the first quarter of next year. Brazil, South Africa, and the new BRICS members, including Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia, are expected to participate by mid-year. By the end of next year, a significant portion of trade between BRICS nations could be settled in silver-backed and gold-backed tokens rather than dollars. Trillions of dollars in annual trade moving outside the American financial system. Now let me explain why silver is specifically included and why this is so significant for silver investors. Gold has always been the monetary metal of central banks, but gold is expensive and relatively scarce. A single gold bar worth $800,000 is impractical for smaller transactions. Gold works for settling large imbalances between major nations. It does not work for everyday trade flows. Silver fills this gap perfectly. Historically, silver has served as the people's money precisely because it is more abundant and more practical for smaller transactions. A silver bar worth $2,000 is much more useful for settling modest trade flows between businesses. The BRICS planners understand this history. They are students of monetary systems going back thousands of years. They are creating a two-tier system, gold for major sovereign settlements, silver for routine commercial trade. The ratio they are reportedly working with is 15.1, the historical ratio that prevailed for centuries across civilizations before Western manipulation distorted the market in the 20th century. At current prices, that ratio implies silver should be trading around $180 per ounce relative to gold at $2,700. The BRICS system is designed around this historical ratio. When it launches, the market will be forced to reprice silver accordingly. Now, why does this matter so much? Let me walk you through the current dollar system and why the BRICS alternative is such an existential threat to American power. Since 1944, the global financial system has been built around the US dollar. Bretton Woods made the dollar the world's reserve currency, initially backed by gold at $35 per ounce. Every other currency was pegged to the dollar, and the dollar was pegged to gold. By the late 1960s, the US was printing far more dollars than it had gold to back them. France and other nations began demanding gold for their dollar holdings. The vaults were emptying. In 1971, Nixon closed the gold window, ending any pretense that dollars were redeemable for metal. The dollar became pure fiat, backed only by government promises and military power. Yet the dollar maintained its reserve currency status without gold backing. Why? Two critical reasons. The petrodollar agreement with Saudi Arabia. In 1974, Henry Kissinger struck a deal. Price all oil in dollars and reinvest surplus petrodollars into U.S. treasuries, and the U.S. will guarantee Saudi security. That meant every nation in the world that needed oil had to first acquire dollars. Network effects and infrastructure lock-in. Once the dollar was established, everyone used it because everyone else used it. The banking system, legal frameworks, accounting standards, everything was built around dollars. Switching away would be costly and risky. These two pillars kept the dollar dominant for 50 years despite endless deficits and trillions of new dollars. Both pillars are now collapsing. The petrodollar is dying. Saudi Arabia now accepts yuan for oil to China. Russia sells oil to India in rupees. Iran sells oil to China in yuan. Venezuela sells oil in anything but dollars. The network effects are being dismantled. BRICS now has 11 full members, with over 40 nations expressing formal interest in joining. They represent 46% of the world's population and the majority of future growth. They are building alternative infrastructure that does not require dollars. The BRICS silver-backed settlement system is the culmination of this decades-long effort. It provides the alternative the world has been waiting for. How does it work in practice? Consider a concrete example. A Chinese electronics company sells smartphones to a Brazilian retailer. Under the old system, Brazil converts reais to dollars. Dollars move through SWIFT via American correspondent banks. The Chinese company receives dollars and may convert them to yuan. At every step, U.S. banks take fees, U.S. regulators see all data, and U.S. politicians can block the transaction. Under the BRICS system, the Brazilian buyer acquires silver-backed tokens on the BRICS platform. They send tokens directly to the Chinese seller via a decentralized network. The Chinese seller can hold the tokens, redeem physical silver from a BRICS vault, or convert to yuan, no dollars. No American banks, no SWIFT, no U.S. surveillance, sanctions, or interference. Faster, cheaper, private, and completely outside American control. This is why the United States is terrified. This is why Western media is silent. This is why propaganda will try to discredit the system. But it will not work. The world's demand for an alternative is too strong. Now let's run the numbers on silver. Current intra-BRICS trade is about $8 trillion per year, growing roughly 12% annually. By 2030, it could exceed $15 trillion. Not all of this will use the new system right away, but the shift will begin and accelerate. If just 20% of BRICS trade shifts to the silver-backed system within 3 years, that's $1.6 trillion per year settled in metals instead of dollars. At a 15.1 gold-silver ratio, around 40% of that value would use silver tokens, about $640 billion per year in silver settlement demand. At current silver prices around $75 per ounce, $640 billion equals roughly 8.5 billion ounces of silver demand. There's a problem. Total above-ground silver inventory is estimated around 1.5 billion ounces. Annual mine production is about 820 million ounces. Annual demand already exceeds supply by 100 many-plus ounces. So you're talking about 8.5 billion ounces of new demand against 820 million ounces of yearly supply. The math does not work, at all. That means one of two things must happen. The BRICS system uses far less silver than projected, or the price of silver must rise dramatically to make the math work. Flip the equation. If BRICS wants to settle 640 B annually in silver and only 500 metric ounces are realistically available for monetary purposes after industrial demand, what price clears the market? 640 B, 500 metric oz, 1,280 per ounce. That's an extreme scenario. Use a more conservative one. If BRICS settles 5% of internal trade in silver, 160 B dollars per year, 160 B dies, 500 metric oz, mas, $320 per ounce. If only 2% of trade, 64 buys, 500 metric oz, mas, $128 per ounce. No matter how conservatively you run it, the conclusion is the same. Silver must reprice dramatically higher to accommodate even modest BRICS settlement demand. And here's the critical insight. BRICS nations know this math. They have armies of economists. They understand silver is dramatically undervalued. They know adopting a silver-backed system forces massive repricing. That's not a bug, it's the feature. China has been accumulating silver for years. Russia has been building metal reserves. India has a cultural preference for silver. These nations are positioning to benefit from the repricing they know is coming. They are not going to announce a silver-backed system and then be surprised when silver goes higher. They are announcing it because they want silver higher. They have accumulated. Now they are ready for the market to discover true value. The announcement is the signal. Accumulation phase ending. Repricing phase beginning. Timeline. The Kazan Declaration tasks finance ministers and central bank governors to present implementation protocols at the next BRICS summit, scheduled for July 2025 in Brazil. That's about 8 months to finalize systems, complete pilots, and prepare broad rollout. By summer 2025, the settlement system could be operational. But markets won't wait for launch. They are forward-looking. Once major players fully internalize what's coming, they accumulate early. This is already visible. Chinese silver imports at record highs, COMEX registered inventory at decade lows. Physical premiums exploding, smart money is buying now, before official launch drives prices to levels that make accumulation impossible. What happens to the dollar when this launches? The dollar's value rests on international demand. Nations hold 12T in dollar-denominated reserves. Central banks maintain huge treasury portfolios. When trade is settled in silver-backed tokens instead of dollars, nations need fewer dollars. They can reduce treasuries and rotate into hard assets. This is already underway. China's treasuries down from 1.3T 2013 to 800B. Now Japan quietly selling Saudi Arabia, diversifying into gold. Central banks globally reducing dollar share, increasing metals. The BRICS system accelerates this from a slow drift to an active flight. Imagine you're Brazil's central bank with 350 billion in reserves, mostly dollars and treasuries. With a working BRICS system, you no longer need as many dollars. You can sell some treasuries, buy silver and gold or metal-backed tokens, rebalance reserves away from politically weaponized dollars, scale that across 40 nations with 4 tiers and combined reserves, synchronize selling of dollars and treasuries, synchronized buying of silver and gold. Selling pressure on the dollar and bonds becomes immense. Buying pressure on precious metals becomes historic. That is the dollar panic. Not Joe Public at the grocery store, but central banks and sovereign funds realizing their reserves are melting and rushing for the exits. The Fed would be forced to hike rates to defend the dollar and attract capital, while print more money to fund deficits when foreign buyers vanish. A doom loop of currency defense that cannot solve the structural problem. During this, what happens to silver? It doesn't grind higher, it goes exponential. In the 1970s, with far smaller imbalances, silver went from $1.50 to $50, a 33x move. Today's debt, geopolitics, and alternatives are all more extreme. A similar 33x move from current levels would mean silver above 2,400 Azures. That's not a prediction. It's an illustration of what's historically possible when reserve currency confidence breaks. Why is Western media silent? Because acknowledging this would accelerate the shift. The dollar system is confidence-based. It relies on the belief there is no viable alternative. If Americans understood BRICS is building a metal-backed alternative, they'd question the dollar, maybe buy silver and gold themselves, accelerating capital flight. So media stays quiet. That's the same strategy used during the collapse of the London gold pool in the 1960s, suppress gold coverage to slow the rush. Today, Russian state media is loudly explaining the new system. Chinese media is celebrating it as historic Indian outlets are outlining its advantages. Meanwhile, U.S. outlets act like nothing happened. That asymmetry is your opportunity. You know what Kazan really meant. You grasp the math. You can position before the masses even notice. If you own silver, this BRICS announcement is your vindication. For years you understood, the dollar system is unsustainable. Debt can't grow forever. The world would return to sound money. You were mocked as a gold bug or silver stacker. Now half the world's population, through their governments, is officially endorsing your thesis. The future of trade is precious metals, not unbacked paper. Every ounce of silver you own is about to become dramatically more valuable, not because of hype, but because of structural demand from BRICS settlement, central bank reserves, investment flight from the dollar, ongoing industrial use, solar, EVs, electronics. Supply cannot expand meaningfully. Mines are flat or declining. Above-ground stocks are depleted. Demand is about to explode from multiple directions at once. You hold one of the most undervalued and under-owned assets on the planet. This is not financial advice. It's what the data in the BRICS announcement show. So what should you do? Understand this is a multi-year process, not an overnight collapse. There will be pullbacks, counter moves, propaganda, but the direction is clear. Continue to accumulate physical silver as your situation allows. BRICS is telling you openly that silver is money. Don't wait for mainstream confirmation. By then, prices will likely reflect the new reality. Review your dollar exposure and consider prudent diversification. Share this information so others can position themselves before the window closes. This is finance reality. The dollar's dominance is ending. BRICS is building a precious metals alternative. Silver is at the center of that architecture. The Kazan announcement proves it. Implementation protocols are being written right now. The launch will make it undeniable. By then, silver will likely be far higher than today. The time to act is now. The information is here. The decision is yours. Like this if it opened your eyes. Subscribe if you want to follow this story as it unfolds. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next critical update. I am Finance Reality.